I can still hear the faint clink of silverware and the polite laughter from that Thanksgiving dinner. The lakefront estate in Traverse City, Michigan shimmered under candlelight, casting warm reflections on the faces that hadn't stepped inside my café in nearly 5 years, even though it was just a short drive into town. From her corner at the head of the table, my cousin Madison's voice rang out, clear, confident, rehearsed. "Everyone, I have an announcement." I looked up, already bracing. Madison sat perfectly straight in her ivory blazer, her engagement ring sparkling under the chandelier. Her fiancé, an orthopedic resident, beamed beside her. She raised her wine glass as though it were an award. "I just got an offer from Kensington Ward. I start as a litigation associate in Chicago this January." The room erupted in applause. Uncle Gerald stood, lifting his glass. "To Madison Rivers, the pride of the Rivers family." I took a long sip of my vanilla rosemary tea, thinking about the signed documents waiting in my desk drawer. The ones confirming the lease on a second location for Willow and Grain Café. But no one here knew that. To them, I was still the one who baked, not someone building a business. "And you, Lila?" Aunt Diane turned to me with a syrupy smile. "Still making scones?" I smiled calmly. "It's called Willow and Grain now, and yes, I'm still running it." "Still whisking eggs, huh?" Madison said with a light laugh, exchanging a glance with our cousin Derek. "If you ever want something more stable, my firm's always looking for office managers." I traced the edge of my plate, remembering the contract I'd finalized that morning. 3 years of exclusive pastry supply for a boutique hotel chain stretching across northern Michigan. It was worth more annually than Madison's starting salary. But they didn't know that. "It keeps me busy," I said lightly. "Busy enough to afford this view?" Uncle Gerald joked, waving toward the lake through the glass doors. I nearly laughed. If they only knew I owned not just the cafe building, but 2 rental homes on the same shoreline. "I get by," I said, smiling. Madison launched into another story, some multi-million-dollar merger she wasn't even leading. Everyone leaned in, starstruck, just like always. Madison, the perfect one. Law school at the University of Michigan, now fast-tracked into a corner office. And me? I was the quiet detour, the girl who left college at 22 to study baking in Vermont and turned a boarded-up bookstore into a thriving cafe. But what they saw as small was already outgrowing them. Now a thriving lakeside destination, Willow and Grain was generating more revenue per quarter than Madison's law firm pulled in all year. "I just finalized the Carter Tech settlement," Madison announced, swirling the last of her Cabernet. Their counsel looked stunned when I flagged the breach clause. Classic oversight. Now they've retained us exclusively. I didn't even blink at the name. If only Madison knew who quietly held controlling interest in Carter Tech's new campus. Through a real estate trust registered under one of my LLCs. Later that evening, as I dried the final serving tray in the kitchen, Grandma joined me. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her scarf. Voice soft. "I just don't understand it," she murmured. "You're so smart, Leela. You could have had a life like Madison's offices, travel, security." "Not everyone dreams of boardrooms and billables," I said gently, folding a towel. "But you're capable of more," she said earnestly. "Look at her penthouse in Chicago, the Tesla, the designer shoes. Don't you want real success?" I thought about the mortgage-free penthouse I'd quietly purchased last month. Lakeview, rooftop garden, deed held in trust under my private investment group. "I'm happy with my path," I said simply. Grandma sighed. "I just worry. Restaurants are so unstable. What if you want a family one day? How will you manage?" I nearly smiled. 6 properties in northern Michigan, equity in 2 rising food startups, silent capital in a regional grocery chain. The cafe was never the end game. It was the start. As coats were slipped on and cheeks kissed goodbye, Madison caught me by the door, standing beside the old brass coat rack. "Ooh," she said, head tilted. "Still baking? Or finally ready for something real?" Her hand landed gently on my forearm. "I meant what I said. Our compliance team is hiring. My firm has great benefits, cushy hours. Uncle Gerald could fast-track you. You'd move up quick. I smiled, stepping back just enough to slide free. Thanks, I said warmly, but I'm exactly where I want to be. Her smile twitched, just for a second. Lila, come on. You can't run a cafe forever. Don't you want to be somebody? If she only knew. I was somebody. Bigger than any of them realized. And tomorrow, they'd see for themselves. I've got an early morning, I said, checking my watch. She raised an eyebrow. Right. Wouldn't want to burn the muffins. I drove back through the misty streets of town, headlights piercing the quiet fog, and turned onto the narrow lane behind Willow and Grain. Golden light still glowed from the prep kitchen. But I didn't go in. I used the side door, the one that led upstairs, to the real headquarters, a sleek, sunlit office above the café. Most thought I spent my days frosting scones and pouring tea, and that was just how I liked it. What they didn't see was the infrastructure I'd quietly built behind the rustic charm of Willow and Grain, 7 LLCs, 2 property groups, and an investment portfolio that had doubled just last quarter. I slid into my leather desk chair upstairs, in the lofted office above the cafe, and pulled out the stamped Carter Tech dossier. Tomorrow, Madison's prestigious firm wouldn't be meeting Carter Tech in a Chicago skyscraper like she assumed. They'd be meeting with me. In this very room. For the past 3 years, I'd been quietly acquiring their overflow assets, abandoned buildings, parking zones, undeveloped lakefront lots, all through shell companies, often using paperwork drafted by her own legal team. 1 lot here, 1 defunct warehouse there. No press, no headlines. And now it was time to merge everything under one name, Rivers Shore Holdings. A subtle nod to the family who never once asked what I really did, only what I wasn't. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Dinner was fun, just a heads up. Carter Tech might be poking around your cafe tomorrow. Don't screw it up. They're big time. I let out a quiet laugh. Yes, Madison. I'll try not to drop the muffins. I set the phone aside, a slow smile rising. Tomorrow would be one for the books. The merger paperwork was tidy. 5 years of land trusts, shell firms, and joint ventures, folding under the umbrella of Rivers Shore Holdings. Once signed, I'd quietly become the largest private landholder along the northern Michigan shoreline, from Traverse City to Petoskey, and no one in my family, not even Madison, had a clue. While they chased titles and trophies, I'd acquired the dirt beneath their dreams. Just before sunrise, I pulled into the Willow and Grain lot. The lamps were still glowing softly behind the cafe windows. My manager, Elise, was already at the espresso bar. Backroom's prepped, she said, handing me my usual. But remind me again, why is a big corporate guy meeting in a bakery instead of a real office? I smiled. Sometimes the biggest deals happen in the quietest places. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Charles Whitaker walked through the front door. He looked nothing like the power player he was, just jeans, a Patagonia vest, and a kind smile. No entourage, no fanfare, just the man who'd helped me stitch together the portfolio piece by piece. "Morning, Ms. Rivers," he said with a knowing grin, then, louder, for the benefit of anyone listening, "Mind making me a cappuccino?" I slipped behind the counter, playing the part. This was our dance. Me, the friendly baker, him, the laid-back customer. And no one would suspect that in 15 minutes, over 2 coffees and a tray of almond croissants, we'd finalize a deal that would reshape the shoreline. Or ever. If you've ever built something quietly while the world overlooked you, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens when Madison finally learns whose signature is on the deed beneath her office. As I frothed the milk, the bell above the cafe door chimed. I glanced up, and there she was. Madison. Impeccable as ever, sleek black suit, leather briefcase in hand, heels clicking crisply across the wood floor like punctuation. "Mr. Whitaker?" she said, pausing mid-step. "I didn't expect to see you here." Charles turned with a measured smile. "I prefer to meet where real decisions are made," he said, casting a subtle glance toward me. Madison blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, Lila, what are you doing?" Charles accepted the cappuccino from my hands with a nod. Ah, Miss Rivers makes the best coffee in all of northern Michigan, he said, then gestured toward the glass-paned room at the back of the café. Care to join our meeting? Madison's brow twitched. Meeting? Yes, Charles replied smoothly. Regarding the East Bay redevelopment, he motioned to the private room most customers assumed was used for bridal brunches or small-town book clubs. Madison's eyes followed him, then reluctantly followed us in. Inside, the room was warm but polished. Walnut conference table, ergonomic chairs, quiet pendant lights. The only clues this wasn't an ordinary cafe office were the mounted security camera and the sleek leather document binder at my place. I'll need a second witness, Charles said, pulling a thick folder from his briefcase. Perhaps your cousin could assist? Madison let out a strained chuckle. Lila? Oh no, she just runs the bakery. She glanced at me like I was a barista accidentally sitting in a CEO's chair. She doesn't need to be involved in legal documentation. Charles smiled politely. On the contrary, she's the principal party in this agreement. I sat at the head of the table, fingers laced, calm, steady, watching as Madison's confusion bloomed into silent disbelief. Actually, Madison, I said, you're the one who doesn't need to be here. But since you are, you may as well witness something historic. The front door chimed again. I turned. Grandpa and Uncle Gerald entered, scanning the cafe until they spotted us through the glass. Their brows knitted with concern. What's going on? Grandpa asked, stepping into the room. Why is Mr. Whitaker meeting you here? Before Madison could answer, Charles stood and smiled. I invited them. It seemed only fitting to finalize this deal in the place where it all began. Madison's voice cut in, sharp. Where what began? I turned the binder toward her. The gold-embossed logo shimmered beneath the pendant lights. Rivers Shore Holdings. Then I opened my laptop and cast the screen to the wall-mount projector. A crisp title slide glowed across the glass. Rehearsed Shore Holdings, Consolidation and Strategic Expansion, FY26 launch. Beneath the title slide, a high-resolution satellite map of Traverse City's East Bay corridor appeared. Entire blocks were outlined in amber. Parcels glowed gold, cafes, boutique storefronts, parking lots, marina frontage, all consolidated under a single name. Rehearsed Shore Holdings. Madison's voice caught. That can't be right. It's accurate, I replied evenly, clicking to the next slide. You might recognize some of the subsidiaries. Blue Timber Trust, Great Lakes Edge LLC, Mariners Walk Development. Madison slowly lowered herself into a chair, eyes fixed on the screen, her confidence visibly unraveling. Wait, those are the same parcels we've been managing legal contracts for. It was written policy after policy on those. They were filed under Charles Whitaker's clients, not yours. Not quite, Charles interjected smoothly, folding his hands on the table. They belong to Lila. I've simply helped facilitate the acquisitions. Quietly. Grandpa's voice shot up. That's not possible. Lila runs a bakery. She couldn't possibly... I slid a thick folder across the table. Calm, precise. I flipped it open to the first page. Ownership titles, merger documents, financial summaries. The cafe was just the beginning, I said. 5 years ago, when I bought this building, I realized how undervalued the entire street was. No one paid attention, but I did. I turned another page, charts, forecasts, growth maps. While everyone dismissed me as the girl with the muffins, I was assembling something real. I attended development summits, secured angel investors, negotiated joint ventures. Now, this portfolio represents the largest private landholding on this side of Lake Michigan. Madison reached for the binder, flipping pages as if trying to prove it was some kind of elaborate hoax, but the signatures were all there, each document airtight, each acquisition traceable. I watched her expression morph from denial to confusion to stunned realization. This is worth, she whispered, hundreds of millions. You own half the bayfront, Grandpa muttered, sitting back, eyes wide. More than half, Charles added, unable to hide a note of admiration. Your cousin saw opportunity where others saw blight. A forgotten stretch of shops became the spine of a legacy. Madison looked up slowly, meeting my gaze. For once she was speechless. Rather like buying a neglected café, Charles added with a wink, and turning it into the keystone of a commercial empire. Grandpa collapsed into the chair beside her, looking like the air had left the room. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, voice faint. "Would you have believed me?" I asked softly. I let the question hang. "You were too busy assuming I was wasting my life frosting cupcakes." He smiled, faintly. "It was easier to let you think that, while I built something on my own terms." "But you wore an apron," Madison said, her voice cracking as she tried to make sense of everything. I gave a calm, measured smile. "I wear a lot of things, Madison." I met her eyes, steady. "Sometimes it's an apron. Sometimes it's a tailored blazer. The difference is, I never needed anyone else's title to validate my worth." Charles set the sleek black pen beside the contract binder with quiet ceremony. "Shall we make it official?" I signed first, hands steady, stroke deliberate. Charles followed, his signature marking the date with finality. And just like that, Rivershore Holdings became the single largest private landholder on the East Bay of Traverse City. "Congratulations," Charles said warmly, shaking my hand. "Though I'll miss our morning coffee meetings." "The cafe's not going anywhere," I laughed, "though I may need to expand once word gets out." That evening, after the stunned silence of my family's slow exit, I returned to my upstairs office. I stood by the window, watching the city lights twinkle over the lake. My city now, in more ways than one. My phone buzzed, a message from Grandma. "Can we meet, maybe, for breakfast?" I smiled. "Sure, I know a little place downtown. The owner's doing pretty well these days." Because sometimes success doesn't scream. Sometimes it smells like warm bread. Sometimes it quietly buys the whole block. I closed my laptop with a soft click and headed down the narrow staircase. By tomorrow morning, the local headlines would read, "Rivershore Holdings consolidates East Bay properties, youngest female investor behind $220.00 M real estate strategy." But tonight, I still had a bakery to run. Because legacy-shifting moves don't always unfold in marble boardrooms or 40th floor conference suites. Sometimes they happen during a casual coffee meeting. Sometimes they rise like cinnamon rolls at dawn, in places where the floorboards creak and the regulars know your name. If you've made it this far, thank you. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's ever been underestimated, ignored, or dismissed because your dream didn't come in a shiny package. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been doubted for following your own path? Mocked for dreaming differently? Let's lift each other up. Remind the world that success wears many faces. And if I can offer just one thing, stop pouring your energy into proving yourself to people who already decided you weren't enough. Build anyway, quietly, boldly, consistently, until they can't look away. Wear the apron, wear the heels, wear whatever makes you feel powerful. But never forget, your worth was never theirs to define. I built this empire one lemon loaf and real estate contract at a time. And if I can do that from a lakeside cafe in northern Michigan, you can too. Start where you are, keep going, keep building. Because sometimes the loudest legacy is quiet, relentless, and completely unstoppable.